Glad to have you back, and if you're just joining us, well, we are coming to you live from our election studio right here in Lagos, where Nigeria decides, and we do some hard talk. Now, after the recently concluded presidential election, all eyes have been on INEC and the electoral bodies, assuring all stakeholders that it is well prepared for the elections this time around, coming up Saturday, barely 48 hours. Joining us to discuss really how prepared INEC is, we have Martin Slumber, a political analyst who's been in the studio for quite a while. Thank you very much for still staying back.
Pleasure.
And we also have Dipo Olayoku, a journalist as well. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, good evening, listeners.
Good to have you join us. Let's start with you, Mr. Dipo, because you just joined us. INEC told us before the 23rd, which was supposed to be the week before 23rd, that we would go on the 16th, that they were fully prepared. Even until the 10th hour, INEC assured us that they were prepared. And then at 2:45 a.m., INEC announced this to the whole world that the elections had been cancelled for logistics reasons. 1 week later, we have an election, and we still see glaringly that logistics is a problem. We see INEC officials, walking in to polling units very late. I think Governor Ambode went to his polling units and didn't see anybody, had to go home. There's so many logistic problems that showed up. But INEC is telling us now again that they are very prepared. Should we take it with a pinch of salt?
No, I think what makes a human being look into the future is when you become optimistic about today. We shouldn't be disappointed, really, in that context. Because the problem we have in this country is we always run away from the truth. By Wednesday of that preceding that February 16th, I think whoever believed that elections will hold on the 16th must be deceiving himself. As a matter of fact, by 14th of Thursday in the evening, a friend called me from Abuja and told me that, Dipo, forget it. Election will not hold on the 16th. INEC knew the problems they had, but they didn't have the guts to face the nation, to tell the nation that elections will not hold. That was why the meeting they were holding on the eve of the election was against the backdrop of what they have.
It wasn't even the eve, it was the election day, at dawn of the election.
No, the meeting started around 11 on Friday.
Okay.
Yes. That should we go ahead with all these things we have discovered? Because there was no way the election will hold in all the 30 states of the Federation. So the problem is, what do we do? Do we go ahead? There will be backlash if we say we're not going ahead. But there will be greater danger if you go ahead, especially because of the way Nigeria politics is configured. Mostly hit, as at that February 15th, was the southeastern states. How do we explain to a nation that election will go ahead in some states while bulk of the southeastern states, elections will hold? So that is the predicament that was facing INEC. Well, I think that one is history now. I think what we need to do is, how do we move ahead? How do we build on the rubbles of February 16? I remember vividly in 2011, the first general election that the immediate past chairman of INEC, Professor Atahiru Jega, was to hold, was the 2011 general elections. And interestingly, as a journalist, for a very long time I had not voted. But because it's that you are in the field covering, or you are in the newsroom receiving reports, or you are in the studio analyzing. I said I was going to vote on that in that 2011 election. Like where I was to vote, we were already at the venue, at the polling unit. The youth corpers were there, the hardcore staff, voters were there. All of a sudden, we were waiting for the materials. All of a sudden, one guy just came around 9 o'clock in the morning. I said, what are you guys doing here? That he had just watched Atahiru Jega. Now, this election you guys are waiting for has been postponed. We went home. And eventually, Atahiru Jega gave us an election that was acceptable to some extent, despite the initial hitch, because the election was coming immediately after the 2007 election, that the then president described as a do-or-die election, that the international community rated as the worst in the history of human being. It was even worse than Somalia, where they were having war. So Atahiru Jega was able to give us election in 2011. And he went ahead to give us 2015 that said what people believe was close to the option A4 that we had. So I think what we are saying in essence is that, we thank God because immediately the announcement was made that AM of, the last election.
Yeah, 16.
The morale of Nigerians were at that point that, oh, they have come again because there's no trust in government and government agencies. That is just unfortunate. But by the time the INEC chairman held a stakeholders meeting where INEC came out, instead of condemnation, people had sympathy.
Yes, but all of those day-to-day analysis or stakeholder meetings, we still expected better. But it still did not yield anything fruitful as compared to the expectations. I tell you, Nigerians had high hopes for INEC for 2019, both for themselves and INEC. But as we can see, there's been a big disparity it's a big departure from the people who registered and collected their PVCs and those who finally showed up to vote. Look at states like Rivers, Akwa Ibom, even Lagos, as metropolitan as Lagos is, with all of the noise that we had all over the place that Nigerians were coming alive and we were coming out to vote, you all went to rubbish.
That one is beyond the purview of INEC. You know, when you're talking about election, a lot of factors come into it. INEC could be said to be the lead agency, but they are not in charge of ancillary matters. You have the issue of security. You have the issue of even logistics that was supposed to be INEC duty. You have the issue of logistics. How do I mean? We have 774. They said, okay, we have about 120,000 polling units. According to, that's about 114,000 polling units, and then there's something they call polling stations, but about 120,000. INEC is a government agency. How do they get the vehicles? To get materials to about 120,000 people, places. That is why they will need to depend on outside sources. The former governor of Cross River, Donald Duke, told us how state governors rigged election during their time. Just a matter of providing local government vehicles, and when you give somebody a local vehicle to go and take materials there, you already compromise the person. And next, okay, we are not going to use that. Maybe we should use the National Union of Road Transport Workers because they have vehicles all over the country. At the same time, they have forgotten that people are individuals, they're Nigerians. They will have their biases. So what stops someone who knows that he has been asked to take election materials to a place that belongs to the opponent? The guy will not show up. He will just show up around 11 o'clock a.m. So there are so many issues. And let me tell you one thing. You know, we can sit here and begin to castigate INEC. Let me tell you, I had been involved in association elections. Association on 2014, 2018. That was when, after this, I said, when Nigerians come on here and say, this person is engaging in rigging, he cannot give us further, an average Nigerian, I'm sorry to say it, does not believe in the sanctity of ballot box.
let's go
Martins,
to you, Mr.
now,
Martins.
quickly, the INEC National Commissioner in charge of Enugu, Anambra, Benue States, Festus Okoye, said just a few hours ago that they are ensuring that all ad hoc staff and materials will get to polling units by 7:30 a.m. so that elections start exactly at 8 a.m. Accreditation, voting going on simultaneously. Uniformly across the federation of across the different states in Nigeria, including the FCT. What do you think would necessarily happen on Saturday? Do we take it with a pinch of salt, or we should still have to look at it with some level of criticism?
We should take it with a bowl of salt.
But he's saying we should be optimistic.
Yeah, of course, we'll be optimistic as the electorate. We hope for the best. But the reality so far, you know, is that they have not demonstrated capacity. That is the reality. Now, that a man goes to church and the church is beautiful, does not demonstrate his faith. The problem with the INEC, the problem with the election is, for me, not even necessarily ad hoc staff, whatever, process. We were told in school that in mathematics you can score 100 over 100, whereas in the arts you can't really get 100 over 100 unless for some reason the lecturer or whoever just wants to use his discretion and give to you. How do I mean? Some of these processes, they are very straightforward. Each time I hear this talk about we're a complex country, for goodness sake, this is the simple reason why we have science. How do I mean? For the whole talk about we're 180 million, we're maybe 200 million, the honest truth is that if we want to take data for these 200 million, you'll be very shocked that all of that, name, address, sex, state of origin, and all of those data, the whole country will not occupy more than 4 gigabytes. You'll be shocked. In this country, when we had this millennium transition, what happened? Some people said millennium bug, and the federal government budgeted money to go and fight the bug. A lot of money, millions of naira. For goodness sake, if you take a hand device, maybe your phone, maybe your wristwatch, digital device, the truth is, if you go to settings, you can always cross the millennium bar. But for that, I don't know, that nonsensical gist, this country, the processes are where the problem lies. If you do elections at polling units, what are you collating? What is collation? Collation is summation of the votes belonging to whoever. For some reason, you go into a collation center, it becomes a shrine. What you took in there is not what you bring out. That is where the problem is. It is the process that we need to deal. I've always said.
But does that not also go to buttress what he just said before?
I don't think
he
we're on the
said
same
something
page.
about that. The fact that he's been part of just ordinary association, elections, that the average Nigerian does not believe in processes. In other words, we like to cut corners. It means that we're also not sincere, and this is what he's saying is playing out even in our general elections. Am I wrong, sir?
Yeah, yes, because if you look at the procedure and guidelines for this election, INEC said immediately after voting, sorting, then you count the votes. And it's expected that after counting, the person in charge of that counting records the score of all the political parties. And it is expected, according to the Electoral Act, that all the agents of the party must sign. But there's a caveat that an agent refuses to sign does not invalidate, because out of mischief he could not determine. So it is expected that after recording, you will give copy each to the agent of the party. 2, there is a form they call Form EC 8A. It is expected that the result you have written in that small paper, you will record it on a very big sheet and paste at the polling unit for everybody who wishes to say. Listen, let me just, so that you will know that INEC is not the problem. It's expected that each agent is supposed to go home with a copy of the result announced at that polling unit. So the problem is all the political parties, or let us say the major parties, are expected to have agents in all the polling units if we are a very serious party.
But
now the problem is, where does the
timing of the arrival of the materials and the personnel who is supposed to ensure that the coordination of the electoral process is smooth. Now, if we don't start by 8 a.m., we cannot say we are going to have collation done by XYZ time. So how then do you now think we are supposed to deal with this issue where INEC says 8 a.m. we will see ad hoc staff, 8 a.m. we'll see election materials there? What should we be asking INEC as at now to ensure that it is already perfected, because we can't lay the excuse of the mobilization of these materials anymore, because we've already successfully conducted the presidential election. So now this is a state governorship election. What are the lessons that should have already been learnt and we should see play out when it comes to the arrival? Would you still be surprised to see ad hoc staff arriving late? In some cases, materials are present, but there is nobody
I certainly won't be surprised. And the reason I say this is that, look at, for instance, my area, my locality, in my community in the village. For you to get across, you may have to go by speedboat, you may have to go in some places like Brass, you're talking of an ocean. And some of these ad hoc staff that maybe come from outside, they are not very comfortable crossing the waters. So chances are that most of those things must have gotten there by the evening, Friday, the eve of the election.
On the election day, it was at about 12:30, I think.
It is very possible that all of these things will get there before D-Day. But even at that, I keep saying, if you have all the fundamentals that is required of a process, there is no reason. You have written exams where they say, okay, you have an answer. True, this is the correct answer, but the processes are not convincing. You get what I'm saying? That is where the issue is, and that is where INEC needs to. In addition to what he was saying, the truth is the Electoral Act gives every individual a right to know the result of his polling unit. It is a right. The same way the late Dora Akunyili said, it is your right to know the drugs that are being prescribed for you in a hospital. The law says that after the counting is done, apart from the polling agents, in fact, most parties don't have polling agents. How do you cover 100,000 polling units? Is it easy? And you pay all of those people? It is not very easy, which is why the electorate themselves, they play a part as witnesses to what was generated at their polling unit. And it is said that after those people have taken the copies of the results, on any wall that is within the polling center, you paste that result. That is the law.
INEC has come out strong now this time around. It says that anywhere you don't use the smart card readers, well, you have 0 votes from those polling units. What do you also make of that stand?
Well, I've had that
with
before.
Allegations
and to use our local parlance, then fall hand.
They weren't used.
Yes.
INEC has called those reports allegations, and they are false. But some would say that was the reality. Smart card readers were not used. So now this time around, INEC has said, whatever the allegation you have, if you don't use your smart card reader, your votes do not count from that polling unit, and the electoral officer will score that a 0 vote. What do you make of that?
That will not help the cause. If there is a register, I know that there is a law, or rather there is a judgment which says that the card reader thing actually is for convenience. If I'm going to interpret that judgment, it simply means that the card reader is not compulsory. That is my understanding of that judgment. What that implies is that as long as your name is on that register, you have something that identifies you as the person on that register. Mind you, as you come in there, they tick your name, that you were present. Are you with me? You are entitled to vote. You cannot deny me of voting if for some reason your staff, it is like this. Whose fault is it? Your staff comes with a malfunctioning card reader, for instance, or doesn't come with a card reader at all, or the card reader got burnt in some inferno, or for some reason thugs came there and took it. As a citizen of Nigeria, I must cast my vote insofar as I'm on that register. And there are living witnesses who know that I'm not a stranger.
So is INEC supposed to, sorry, David, is INEC supposed to at least have a second, an option B, which
they
also...
said no use of incidents form. They were very clear on that
they said,
as well.
It's not about incidents form. You see, which is why the accreditation before voting was a better arrangement. If you understand what I mean. 30 people come, they are interested in voting. Even though 100 people, are in that register. You do your accreditation, all the people are there, live and direct. And again, each of those ballot papers, they have their serial numbers. The polling unit has a serial number. It has an address, which is why I don't understand all of these things. This is something that, sorry to say, I can bet you a primary school child, if you present the processes to the child, it's just like doing puzzle. The child will conduct a successful election.
Do you think that INEC saying that the use of smart card readers is mandatory is a faulted or flawed argument and shouldn't even be raised in the first instance, seeing all of the allegations that flew from February 23?
I think the problem we have is that a lot of people comment on issues without having adequate knowledge about these things. And there's need for us to be very careful what we push into the public space. Coming on here to say the candidates were not used in the North is a misinterpretation of the facts. We have election observers and monitors that went all over the country.
No, the reports or allegations are saying that in some areas...
Listen. Because some people said were not used at all. And INEC had made provision for this kind of lapses. I remembered on the eve of the election that we held on the 23rd, our friend Mike Igimi was on television to educate Nigerians. We're talking of machines. Machine can malfunction anytime. We all go to our ATM bank, our banks to use ATM, and they will tell you that the inter-switch connection is faulty. Something is out of service. INEC had made provision for this process. Initially, they were using for incident form, but they said that one doesn't have enough safeguard. Don't forget that when you get to polling stations, polling unit, there are 3 levels of clearance you need to go through. If there's any problem with card reader, they also have, like my friend just said, they have the register that contains your fingerprint, your print, that contains your picture. So when you get to the first person, he will look at your face. Is this the face that I've seen? Okay. After he sanctioned it, that you're okay, good to go. You go to the next level to clarify what this guy has already done. So it's not a matter of, I just come to you, my friend, okay,
but
just
take if you don't use the smart card reader, is
just to let you, just to buttress what he has said. Because INEC itself understands the fact that there's possibility that this thing will malfunction. That is why they made provision for that level of clearance again. You can use the register, but not incident form. Because the incident form did not take into cognizance your facial outlook, your attributes. So
anybody can be put on that incident form, whether they.
So that's why INEC said for this election we're not going to use incident form. You see, it will be almost impossible for INEC to stick to this card reader stuff. How do I mean? He has just told us, card reader has not become a law. That was why if you go to cases like Rivers, Lagos, and what do you call it? I think it was Taraba in the 2015 elections. The people who lost the election wanted to argue the card reader stuff, and the Court says no. Card reader to us is unknown to the law.
It was inadmissible.
It's unknown.
Yes.
But unfortunately, the card reader has been made an issue in the Electoral Act that was not signed into law by the President. So it would be wrong for INEC. Yes, INEC has the power, the right to set up guidelines, but the guidelines must also be in accordance with the law. That's why INEC made provision for this other form. That, okay, if you cannot get yourself authenticated, go into the register. But certain safeguard has been put in place to make sure. But do you think
that INEC has already eased the fears of the electorate? Because we also hear that there have been some reports of manipulation where the card readers are made to function properly within certain areas and not necessarily speedily function in other areas as well.
That's exactly what I said at the beginning of this program. You see, the issue of elections are beyond INEC. He had just told us.
The materials provided
there are some areas that you cannot access them by road, but you go by water. What stops INEC by, okay, the election is tomorrow. Every materials you will need will be taken there by Friday. But overnight, Friday night, some people will go and attack INEC staff and do away with the electoral materials. It is because our people don't have a confidence in the sanctity of ballot box. If our people have that confidence, that's why I said when people begin to compare American election with Nigerian election, what about the people that are involved in this exercise? When INEC organizes election, they will put our children as coppers to go and conduct election, and somebody will send gun with thugs to go and attack them. Are you telling me INEC is at fault? So until Nigerian politicians begin to understand the essence of democracy, that democracy is government of the people given out willingly by the people. But an average Nigerian politician believes, oh, there should be a short-circuit the system. And when the teen, I think you said boys and men off the camera. When some people who out-tweeted the other, he will begin to shout. Himself, did he set out initially to go properly according to the rule? So if we shift our focus away from INEC and begin to address the constitution, the nuisance that the politicians represent, we will not be able to get out of this mess.
All right, well, before we wrap up this conversation, we have a clip of talking about INEC's preparedness. Let's take a look at that video, and when we come back, we'll talk more. Stay tuned.
The resident electoral commissioner of INEC for Lagos State has convened a Meet the Press forum to update the media on the state of affairs in the forthcoming elections.
INEC and the press is like fish and water. There is no fish that can survive outside water. And so INEC cannot survive without the support of the press to help us disseminate information on what we do. So essentially that's why we have come over here to meet the gentlemen of the press and tell them what we are doing about Saturday's forthcoming elections.
While acknowledging the challenges of the previous elections, he affirms that all have been put in place for the coming elections, which would include rerun elections to be held in 76 registration areas and 148 polling units, with a total number of 43,660 registered voters.
There are two categories of factors. There are factors that INEC controls exclusively. You will find that in any election that we conduct, you hardly can fault us on our preparations or on what we are supposed to do. The other group is where we have the factors that we do not directly control, which we still have to rely upon. That's where we have issues or challenges. But this time around, we have tried to plug all holes with all other supporters, with all other supporting staff in the forthcoming elections.
The media was praised for its coverage during the elections.
Well, in the presidential election, national election, the media made us proud. I think so far so fair. We were fair to all political parties, and we gave, we discharge our responsibility professionally.
The NUJ chairman, while commending journalists, advised that care be taken to avoid sanctions from MBC, as seen after the elections of the 23rd of February.
We were telling our colleagues that in this election, you must also be extra careful. And if you go, below the belt, if you didn't get it right, you are going to be sanctioned, especially those in the broadcast media. So we are not surprised that the NBC, the regulator, sanctioned some media organization. If you err in any area whatsoever of the broadcasting code, the sanction is clear. And that's exactly what NBC has done. So we are in support of it.
All is set for the coming elections, according to the resident electoral commissioner, who called for a collaborative effort to make it a success. For Plus TV Africa, Amaka Okoye.
You're still watching Nigeria Decides, and we're live on Plus TV Africa. We still have our guests in the studio, and we're still looking at INEC's level of preparedness. We're looking at all the loopholes that need to be plugged to make sure that we have free, fair, credible elections. Now, before we wrap up and go for the news, Mr. Lumber and Mr. Dikbo, any last words? What should we, because I asked this question on the first segment, what role are we playing? Because it seems like both of you finally, have come to a rallying point that it is beyond INEC. It goes beyond INEC's preparedness. It is about us, the people, embracing the true meaning of democracy.
Yes, even you and I have a role to play. As media practitioners, there's a need for us to begin to tell an average Nigerian that they should take that process. That's why very many of us keyed into take it back something, because something has gone wrong with our system. There's a need for us, Nigerians shouldn't see politics as a game for those people, because the destiny of our children and unborn generation is tied around how politics is played. That is why an average Nigerian must be involved. And you see, we can continue to blow grammar, but until we begin to penalize, or let me use the word punish, electoral malpractices, it will be difficult for us to do away with it. Go and look at the history of Nigeria since before we were born. Every election has been characterized by all manners of electoral violence, all manner of something, but nobody has ever been punished for this kind of offense. Nobody. I remember that when Nigeria got into office, in his inaugural speech, he said he understands the fact that the process that threw him up was greatly flawed, and that he was going to do something to correct it. The first assignment the man carried out in office was to sort out of the Justice Ways Commission, the former Chief Justice of Nigeria, and eminent Nigerians. Those guys traversed the whole of Nigeria, collecting views.
The big question is, what did they do with the outcome of that inquest? Because
in that report, they said they should set up what they call Election Petition Tribunal, Election Petition Commission, then Election Petition Tribunal. The commission will investigate and take them to court, tribunal, instead of conventional court where cases can last for 6-7 years. Tribunal, within 6 months, the matter is disposed of. What has become of the report? That's the problem.
It's gone to rot.
For me, I don't exactly absolve INEC. I feel they have a very, very prominent role to play. Essentially, the whole of this exercise rests on their shoulders, even though there are other environmental factors, like he said. However, basically, INEC carries the bulk of the responsibility. Having said that, for us, or at least for me, essentially, I've always maintained that unless you have a system, it will be difficult to do anything. Strong institutions, not strong men. You look at the fight against corruption, it's the same story. Take, for instance, the BVN that came in. We have seen the difference that it has made. Look at the biometrics with payroll system. You have seen the difference it has made. So our electioneering system should also embrace modernization and also embrace sincerity of purpose. That will make all of the difference. That will reduce the cost of electioneering. What is the purpose of going to give a bribe when you know that the bribe will make no difference? What is the purpose of going to take a life when you know that the life will make no difference? And these systems are not terrible to do. Even as we sit here, in another 48 hours, I can assure you that if these people are serious, for instance, in their guidelines, they say they must make sure they use card readers. Incidentally, so many places, as it was alleged, the card readers were not used. And I can assure you that a number of people were aware that in some of these places they were not going to use card readers. And so they took advantage of it, and now see where we are.
Well, we got to go, but first we want to thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Martins Lumber, he's a political analyst, and of course, Dikbo Olayoku, he's a journalist. Thank you, gentlemen, for speaking with us. David?
The conversation continues in just a moment, right after this quick break. Don't go anywhere.